Well, joining us now on This Is a Day is Mark Hart, the Bible Geek, who is an author, speaker, radio host, and producer. He does it all. And he joins us today to talk about his video series, Venture, the Bible Timeline for High School. Mark, how are you doing today?
Great. It's great to see you, gentlemen. Thanks for having me again.
Great to see you. I think it's 73 now here in Boston, so it's a degree warmer than Phoenix.
I know the Lord loves you. He does not love you that much. Okay.
Well, hey, unfortunately, because I have a teenager now. My other kids are older. But unfortunately, when you think of teens' activities, you don't always picture them reading the Bible. Tell us why it's important, Mark, and maybe now more than ever, to get teens to read and understand the Bible.
That's a great question. I mean, I'm now in my 27th year of youth ministry, and teens, they don't change, but they change a lot, if that makes sense. And right now, we're living in a time and in a culture. This has nothing to do just even with post-COVID and that sort of thing, but where teens are more and more desensitized to reality, because we're living in virtual reality, living on our screens and our video games and Zoom calls all the time. I mean, we have massive confusion when it comes to gender and gender dysphoria. We have massive confusion as to moral relativism and secular humanism and what is truth. And really, more and more questions about their own personal identity that extend far beyond just gender or future, but just those larger questions about, is there really a God? And if there is a God, can I really trust him? And we oftentimes want to engage with our young people, our kids, our teenagers or preteens on a philosophical level, because oftentimes we don't feel, maybe as parents, prepared to talk about things on a theological level, right? So we speak more in theory than in something tangible. But the scriptures are our greatest family heirloom, and the scriptures, I mean, are the Catholic Church's greatest gift to the world outside of the sacraments. So really, this is where we find our true self, our true identity. This is where we find our purpose. This is where we start to develop that relationship with this God that seems so distant, but is actually so available.
So, Mark, let's venture into the meat of the matter here. Tell us about this video series and the ways that you're trying to get young people, teens, more excited about reading the Bible, about reading the scriptures.
Well, I think any Catholic outside of a scripture theologian would admit that we've all been at Mass before, and they get up to read the readings from the Old Testament, and you're thinking, I can't pronounce this name. I can't find this city on a map. And what does this possibly have to do with my life in the 21st century? And that's not just for adolescents. That's for us adults, right? So the idea behind Venture, you're probably very familiar with Jeff Cavins, who's a good friend, his Great Adventure Timeline series that walks people through all the covenants and walks people through the story of salvation. Well, I met Jeff like 2-3 decades ago, and I had seen what he was doing, and I asked him for permission to adapt this for young people. So condensing it and compressing it, but walking our teenagers through from the very beginning of creation through Revelation in 8 very quick, very easy lessons to be able to help them to understand the story of creation, the story of salvation, but more importantly, to find their story within the story. Because even though things have changed over 4,000 years, 2,000 years, the heart's longing hasn't changed. That God creates us and places within us a longing for him, a longing that only he can fulfill and satiate. So the more that we, and the quicker that we can understand or help our young people to understand, this is not just grandma's church. This is not just your great-grandmother's church. This is your church. And you have a role to play, that God formed you in your mother's womb, and he consecrated you. And he has a plan and a vocation that only you can fulfill. But these are questions that most typical 15 and 16 and 17-year-olds are not stopping to ask, because to stop to ask that means you have to get off of your phone and look up and look within and not just look down. And that's really where it becomes, we're always looking for our young people to have reverence at Mass. Well, reverence begins with relevance, and relevance begins with a relationship.
Mark, I think you said you've been working with teens now for 27 years. During that time, how has that helped you to put this series together and maybe anticipate some of the tough questions teens have about the Bible?
I've given it and taught Bible studies on 5 continents, more times than I can count, with kids big and small, confirmation groups of 8 kids on a linoleum floor, stadiums of 30,000 kids. And I'll tell you something, it's always the same questions. You can't get into Genesis without hearing the questions about evolution, the Big Bang, and do we really come from the same set of parents? You can't walk through the Old Testament and not hear about, why does God seem so angry, in the Old Testament? Why does he seem so different than the New Testament? You can't get through conversations about St. Paul without questions about culture and about the role of women in society and how men and women interact, all those sorts of things. So reading a Bible study for teenagers is very difficult because of all the digression. And what I'm very excited about in this series is that I attacked it very differently this time, where we have the main teaching portion. So then there are all these other offshoots where I interview master catechists, PhDs who are all friends of mine who really know how to talk to young people. And in shorter tidbits, we empower catechists, youth ministers, parents to be able to answer these questions they probably feel really ill-equipped to answer without taking away from and digressing from the actual narrative. So there's a variety of resources, video and written, that anyone with no scriptural background can use to be able to take young people through the story of salvation and to help them begin to engage in and read Scripture on their own.
Just really quickly, we're almost out of time. Can this be used, I know it can be used in a parish, can it be used at home in a family too? Venture?
Yeah, this is being used by families who just want to sit down. It's a lot of fun. The graphics are amazing, very fast-paced. It's being used with homeschool groups. It's being used with youth groups. It's being used in high school classrooms. Really, really excited about the response. We have a very talented team that helped bring this whole thing together.
Great.
So, Mark, where can people find and sign up for Venture, the Bible Timeline for High School?
Yeah, if you head to ascensionpress.com/venture, you can see free samples. You can get a free starter pack. You can watch samples of the videos to see the quality. I really think your young people, the teenagers, your kids, your grandkids who engage with it will have a lot of fun.
Check it out.
Yeah, we're playing some of it as you were talking. It looks great. Mark, thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.
Great to see you both. God bless.
Bye, Mark.
Thank
God bless.
you.